Hi there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Crystal Whittevrongel, collaborating with Common Sense Edmonton. I'm here today with Jason Bale, who is running for Edmonton City Council in Ward Karhiio. Jason, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me, Crystal. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and the foundation that you're bringing with you to City Council.
Sure. So I used to work for the previous city councilor for this office. It was then Ward 11 is Mike Nickel. I was his research assistant for 4 years. So I've seen the inner workings of City Hall and how things go. I've been through that training process and such. And so when I see this city council and the way that they're making their votes, it doesn't look like the communities are being reflected, having their values reflected in those votes. So I'm running to make sure that people are heard and that it's people running the city.
And I mean, I think that's what people want to hear, so that's great news. And what are you hearing from people in your ward? What are some of the priorities for this election?
So the number one issue that I'm hearing at the doors is infill and the zoning bylaw, and I heard that very, very early on. And um, yeah, people just want some reasonable levels of development near their homes because they're worried about what the impacts of that is on their storm and sanitary sewers, their electric grid, and even their classroom capacity. If we're cramming all these families into neighborhoods with overstuffed classrooms, then that's just going to bleed over into education there. Number two that I'm hearing about is taxes. I mean, it's no secret that this council spent like an 18-year-old with their very first credit card, and now the taxpayers are the ones picking up the bill for that. So we got to get down to reasonable levels. I posted a shadow budget on my website, and to my knowledge, I'm the only candidate in the city with one of those. And then third is it varies neighborhood by neighborhood. Some are concerned about neighborhood renewal, some are waste collection, some are snow and ice control. It really varies.
Okay, well, let's jump into these priorities then, and we can start with the infill development bylaw that you mentioned. And so residents really are quite upset about this bylaw and report not feeling heard, and having massive issues, as you mentioned, on certain aspects of communities. What is your perspective on this issue?
So I think what council did was they set up a system for a yes to all for these kind of developments that are up to 8 units, and I think that developments of that magnitude need to go to a council vote because that's literally half of council's job is those zoning hearings and zoning matters. And so what I've been or proposed through my website there is one, we got to bring back minimum parking requirements. Not having any developers have just decided to not provide any. And now it used to be one per bedroom, so wasn't a lot of 3 and 4 bedroom apartment units being built. But I think completely taken out of the way was a bit of an overcorrection, and I think going down to one per unit is fair. And then we need to look at the default of what's automatically approved for unit counts. I think two, so you can have a single detached or a semi-detached home with a secondary suite, whether that's garden, garage, or basement. That's up to you how to decide that. And then, but we got to put size requirements on there too to avoid a developer buying a single detached home, splitting it into semi-detached housing, and then putting secondary suites in there to circumvent and get a fourplex. So yeah, that's one of the ways that I think we deal with it.
And what do you think about the pace of what has currently happened and what should happen? Like, how do you kind of rectify the difference there?
So the pace is one thing. I mean, we got to build up to demand, so I understand that. It's
Mhm.
it's the pace of infill that has me concerned. I mean, this city council decided that they wanted to declare a housing emergency, but then they took options off the table. I mean, why aren't we looking at gentle sprawl? We've got this space between Edmonton and Sherwood Park, and if we don't develop that, then Sherwood Park's going to develop it. So we might as well get in there and look at ways to address housing. Then when you look at the real estate market, a lot of realtors won't touch these apartments or condos because there's just not enough demand for them, right? So if we're going to be providing housing choice, then we need to respect the choices that people are making, which is largely single detached housing.
Mhm, mhm. And what do you think about the way that the city engaged with residents or didn't engage with residents, and what would you do differently?
So I think the city's engagement policies are more akin to show and tell than they are public consultation, and that's what I'd like to see us get back to. With the zoning bylaw for a citywide matter, I'm not sure how we do that exactly. I just know that it was a very, very low amount of people that were actually felt engaged, and of that, a very large number of people came to speak at City Hall, and City Council effectively said, "We don't care. We're going to do what we want anyways." So now, where I'm looking at with public engagement is things like on your neighborhood renewal. There's all this infrastructure that's going in, and people don't feel like they had an opportunity to actually have any input on that. So and the reason is because the city created a 30-day petition window, and they want you to have a commissioner of oaths sign to confirm that you are the homeowner and that you oppose this. But I mean, that's a lot of effort for people to go through outside of their daily routine, their work, their spend
Mhm.
family. So I'd like to see if what happens if we reverse that. What if we made the city get 50% plus one properties on board with the development that's going in there right now? For small scale like neighborhood renewal, it works. For larger scale like zoning bylaw, it's a bit more tricky.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that would, I would assume, entail quite a bit more cost if the city were to have to do that in the larger scale there. But
Mm.
when we look at the public engagement side of that bylaw, what would you do to rebuild trust just in general, in a public engagement context? Because it's been shattered with residents.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. And honestly, I don't think the city is trying. I mean, everybody knows when their tax bill is due. Everybody gets notified of their tax assessment, but not everybody gets notified of the zoning bylaw or big matters like that. So the city plan is another example. So why can we reach all of these people when we want money from them, but when it's a big city building decision like this, why is so few people heard? And so I think that comes down to the city doesn't actually want to hear from people. And so we got to change that mentality from the inside and hopefully start to build more trust on that. If we put in some of those safeguard mechanics, like I mentioned, where the burden's on the city to get the majority of residents on board, then
Mhm.
people might feel a bit more trusting. So.
Okay, and let's now talk about the second priority that you had mentioned, which is property taxes. We have seen record increases just kind of year after year. People are really getting tired of paying more for less, or what they perceive to be less in terms of service quality. What do you propose if you were in city council? Would you be supportive of further tax increases, or are you more on the hold the line on tax increases camp?
So, uh, in a binary, I'm more on the hold the line side. I think what we need to do is we need to grow our non-residential base over time, and as we add more properties, whatever that provides in tax revenue, we can add that to the tax base. But for the most part, we got to be able to send a signal of look, we're serious about getting your taxes down, and what we need to look at is what the average homeowner is paying. That was $2,600 approximately in 2021, and now that same home is paying about $4,000. So by adding more properties, we don't actually have to make any cuts. We can just reduce everybody's share because of the zero sum nature of the tax base.
Mhm. And so what do you think then for spending? Because taxes is just one side of the equation. And if we're talking about services and like a degrading service quality, at least like when I think about snow removal, for instance, how do you see spending play out in the next 4 years in city council?
So in my shadow budget, what I did was I went after two main areas. First was consultant usage, and what I did was I indexed it to a 20% increase from 2021 levels. Just to keep it relatively in line with the tax increases. And the second thing I tackled was going after or grant funding to organizations that don't disclose how they spend the money. And
Mhm.
collectively, we saved a couple of $100 million just on those two items. And I don't think those are very controversial at all. If you receive grant money from the city, you got to tell us how you spend it before you get more.
I mean, it seems pretty reasonable to me.
Me too, but apparently not this city council.
Well, there's another thing with city council that is interesting is that in recent years it appears they have taken on more and more things that aren't necessarily a core core task of city government. What do you think that the core tasks or core nature of city government should really be focused on?
Anything that's listed in the Municipal Government Act is our jurisdiction. If it's not listed, there's no reason we can't be partners with other orders of government, but we are not the core driver of that kind of policy. So things like housing, for example, we have our role where we set the zoning and parameters around that. But when it comes to building it, we can give some grant money out. I think that's fine. We can address some of the enforcement side, because not everybody needs ticket, not everybody needs a handcuff. Sometimes they just need a lift from the street over to uh, some social programs, right? So there's things that we can kind of do on that, but for the most
Mhm.
part, that's provincial jurisdiction, and we need to stop sending angry tweets at them and start reaching out and saying, look. We want to help you. We want to solve this. How do we work together on this? But they got to take the lead on it.
Mhm. And so that's my next question is, we've seen a degradation also in the relationship with the province. And that is very problematic, especially when you've got these areas of overlap, even though like mental health and addictions and health is a provincial jurisdiction. But like you said, there's, things that trickle out in terms of the enforcement side or things of that nature. What do you think the city should do, or what would you do on city council to try to rebuild that relationship with the province?
So I think the election is the opportunity for a fresh start, especially with municipal, because it's so historically independent based. And
Mhm,
we got to reach out to the minister of municipal affairs. We got to reach out to the premier's office and say, look, the election's done. The past council was the past council. The next council's here, and we want to work together. We want to move forward on files, and we should be looking to get our federal partners in the same room and say, look, there's things that we're dealing with that we shouldn't be. How can you guys come in and help? Even things that are municipal responsibility, like the police budget, we don't get to see those audits, the province does. So
mhm,
yeah, it's our jurisdiction, but we also want to have some of that ability for accountability. So
mhm. The police budget's another thing I'd love to talk with you about too, is we've seen on the same sort of scope of, the relationship with the province being strained. It's also strained with Edmonton Police Service and the Police Commission. And part of it is budgeting or transparency there. What are your thoughts on the balance that needs to be struck between the operational ability to maneuver of the police, but then the oversight of city council?
So I think the first thing that needs to be done is a clear message needs to be sent that we do not tolerate crime in this city. And now the reverse was sent with this council. They were asking in their inauguration meetings and their training meetings to say, I want to defund the police. What's my mechanism? Before there's any meetings about the police. Like they knew going in, and that's kind of sent that message to criminals that city council doesn't support the police. There was the 11 million, I think it was, that the city council removed from the police funding or froze. And they eventually put the funding formula back in, but they were just solving a problem they created, and they didn't even address all the impacts like that messaging, right? So
Mhm,
residents don't feel safe. Then when it came to the public spaces bylaw earlier this year, when they lowered the fine amount for openly smoking hard illegal drugs down to $25, I mean that's cheaper than a night at the movies.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it begs the question of public safety, but also the accountability piece. It seems to not really be there kind of on either side when there's these rifts. And so what do you think about the police funding model as you just kind of mentioned it?
So I think it's fair to have a police funding model. I think we should also look at doing the same things for things like transit and for snow clearing, which I know a previous city council a long time ago tried to do with the financial stabilization reserve, but then councils since then have just kind of used it as um, a slush fund for whatever
Mhm,
they would decide to spend on. So I don't have a problem with the consistent police funding and that funding model. But what I'm looking at is okay, we give you money. By the end of 2026, I want constituents to call me and say, thanks, I feel safer. I'm taking public transit now when I didn't feel like I could do that before. I'm, I don't feel pressured by the crime in the neighborhood to get doorbell cameras installed that I may not be able to afford right now. So those are the kind of calls that I want to get. So I want to have that conversation with the police and say, what will it take to get that? I don't care really how you get it. I mean, I care, but not like I can really say much on how they do that. But yeah, I'm looking for those results, um, and I just got to trust the police to do their thing a little bit, and I hope that that trust comes the other way as well.
Yeah, and so what do you think about a return to more of a community policing model? I know it's been mentioned by a few folks as being, something that we should be moving back to in order to decrease some of the crime that we're seeing. Do you think that that is a viable option for this city or for the Edmonton Police Service?
Well, I'm glad to hear that other candidates are talking about it because I'm actually the only candidate running in this election citywide that's actually set one of those programs up before. It was wildly successful, and all it was we put police in the community, and they were stopping people walking their dogs, talking to them, and saying, "Hey, what's going on in your community?" And just by doing that, we shut down 3 meth labs in the first year of that program. And with that, a lot of the nearby property crime went away too. So we did it. I've done it before without a council vote, without a budget increase. I'm happy to do it again. As I understand it, the new chief Dreichel likes these community policing programs, so I don't think
Mhm.
it'll be too difficult for me to get it set up again. But yeah.
And what do you think then with regards to transit safety? You mentioned it as, people aren't really wanting to take transit. Do you see police playing more of a presence on transit, or do you see another mechanism for helping with transit safety?
So with that trust building with the police, again, we can't tell them what to do, but I hope that they will come and do some transit enforcement. And whether they do or they don't, I want to look at using our peace officers. So a lot of people don't know this, but the peace officers that used to do photo radar, they have the same classification as a transit peace officer. They have the same training. So that 1.5 million that we were spending on having these peace officers do photo radar. Now that we're not doing photo radar, they were never taken off of our books. We're still paying them and they're not doing anything. So, at least not that I can find. So, I would like to get them on transit stations. And what that looks like in 2023, we had 13,000 service hours on transit station. If we just moved over the photo radar, we add another 54,000.
Wow. So that to me is much more of a reallocation of already existing funding rather than requiring new sums of money.
Exactly. And to the city council, they decided to hire private security, which can only observe and report.
Mhm.
And that was a $5 million contract. So why are we hiring out a third party at a cost of what, 3 times what we're already paying people to not do that job? Like it makes so much sense to me just to reallocate those resources.
So can the peace officers do more than observe and report, or are they kind of an intermediary in the same way?
So they can issue fines for
Okay.
bylaws. I believe they can detain to a certain degree. But what I would like, ideally, what I'd like to see is a peace officer and a police officer combination,
Mhm.
just to kind of a working together team. I know we use them as help teams as well for a
Mhm.
police officer and a social worker, and I like those dual teams like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that with bylaw and police.
Yeah, yeah, to me that makes a lot of sense. And that really puts a lot of the perception of safety back in place for transit, whether or not, I would assume it obviously will have an impact, but even if it didn't bring down numbers of crime or things happening, at least the perception of safety is there, which I think is one piece of it for some people. But also, what are your thoughts on like a closed gate system or fare gates in order to basically have that level of enforcement to the transit stations right before you're even in them?
So with fare gates, I'm open-minded but hesitant. My
Mhm.
concern is that anytime the city takes on a capital project, they're not exactly known for staying on budget or on schedule. So I don't want results 2 or 3 years from now. I want results now. That's
Mhm.
why I'm looking at more the option of putting teams in place. Plus, as far as I understand, they don't actually stop the problem. They just move the problem away from transit stations. And people that want to use transit still have to go past those unsafe areas. So
Mhm. And in your ward, is it along a lot of transit corridors? What does that look like?
yeah, so we have the Valley Line West LRT or Valley Line South LRT that finally got completed. Again, one of those projects that was over schedule, and I'm pretty sure it was over budget. But that was I think an in private discussion. So so yeah, there's a lot of concerns around Millwoods Town Center. We did an event with the police, and they highlighted that as a safety concern area, and it's literally 2-3 blocks from a police station.
Hmm. Interesting. And so does that area also see a lot of densification, like with the infill discussion, or is it a neighborhood that's largely like untouched by that?
So not yet, but this city council did approve. Well, previous city council approved some 16-story towers to go in there. This city
Mhm.
council approved changing that to 22-story towers. Now, the history of Mill Woods is that it's largely built on swamp and landfill, and we already have a ton of properties that are 3 stories high that are having foundation issues. And I don't know if that section is able to handle that. I don't know if that section has the storm and sanitary sewer capacity or the electrical grid capacity. So they are starting to densify it, but again, I have some concerns on that. I'd also like to
Mhm.
see development no higher than the hospital, because then we have to buy new fire trucks that can actually reach those heights.
Okay.
So there's a lot of cost impacts about infill that people just aren't simply aware of.
Yeah, a lot of cascading costs, it seems, and if they're not well planned, it is a nightmare, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, and so this election's a little different as we are for the first time seeing parties at the municipal level. Are you part of any of these political parties at the municipal level?
No parties, no third party advertisers, no special interest groups. I am just an independent running to have the voices of Ward Karhiio residents heard. And you know, it's extremely frustrating to see these political games that some of these organizations are doing. I don't know if you saw the leaked document there from Working Families Edmonton, how it looks like they put in writing that they want to run things like a party, but identify as a third party advertiser so that they can circumvent those financing limits and the disclosure laws.
Oh,
It's not right. And then we have this other third party advertiser now, Edmonton Forward, that's um, uh, it seems like they're in the same boat. I mean, a third party advertiser is a third party advertiser, and then we have the
yeah.
official parties. And yeah, it's interesting, but a lot of people are telling me they want someone that is not beholden to somebody else. And whether that's a party, whether that's unions, whether that's developers or businesses, they it goes back to that building trust. And if we want to have trust in our elected officials, we need that certainty that they are not beholden to somebody else.
And that's definitely something that I've heard a lot of during this election is that people just don't feel like they're being heard. And so, being able to show that you are listening and listening to them for them, I think is definitely a leg up. Um, and then one thing with the voters that I've been hearing as well is, for them to understand a bit more of your values. And so, what do you have any affiliations at the provincial or federal level with any parties or anything like that?
No, so I've worked on Democrat campaigns. I've worked on conservative campaigns. I was a constituency association board member for the Alberta Party for 2 years. I used to work in Mike Nichols' office. I can work with people across the spectrum. One of the things I did previously too was it was Bill 3 in 2019, I believe it was. It was the residential dispute service for mobile home residents. We engaged with residents. We found a way to kind of stop the provincial and municipal government from playing football with the jurisdiction of who actually looks after those communities. So we put a stop to it, and we got that passed at the legislature unanimously. So I'm happy to work with anyone that wants to work hard.
Wonderful. Well, as we work to kind of close this interview out, is there one thing you'd like to leave with viewers today?
So I think you touched on something very important there about how people don't feel heard. And now there's a survey on my website. It's 20 questions on municipal issues plus an open feedback section. And if you go through the questions, you'll notice that none of them are on the zoning bylaw because I didn't anticipate that as a major election issue. But because I left that open feedback section, that's where people have been telling me infill is number one for them. And so that's why I made it such a comprehensive part of my platform because I'm listening to that feedback. And I read all of those responses myself, and I think that's kind of what we need at the governance level is someone that will take the concerns of the people that are taking the time out of their day to write in and then who's going to action that. So I've made two commitments about infill specifically there. One, I'm going to put forward a motion to repeal the zoning bylaw. It's going to take months to come back, but we still got to address the wound while we're going in for surgery. So I'm looking at also putting forward some of those amendments that I mentioned earlier. And then if the amendments are working, then when that repeal comes back, maybe we don't need to actually repeal it. And if those amendments aren't working, then at least the repeal is ready to go for us. So
Wow. Well, Jason, thank you so much. This has been really informative. I've learned quite a bit from you today. And your perspective is really valuable in letting viewers know what you're about for your ward in this election. So thank you so much for being here with me today. And to our viewers, thank you also for watching. There are some really important common threads through all of these interviews, one of which is to get engaged, stay informed, and get out and vote. We have seen a very low voter turnout in recent years at these municipal elections, and we need to change that. You have a voice, use it. So get out and vote. Jason, thank you again. This has really, really been a great convo.
likewise, thanks very much, Crystal.
Thank you.